Please remain standing for the presentation of colors and the singing of the national anthem.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Nixon Foundation, I'm Chris Nordyke. Welcome to the East Room of the Richard Nixon Presidential Library. I'd like to express gratitude to the teams that made such a special open to the ceremony possible. To Corey Gallup and the Orange County Fire Authority Pipes and Drums, the Blue Eagles Honor Guard from March Air Force Base, and Michael Varker and the Orange County Fire Authority Honor Guard, and the Orange County Chamber Singers for the National Anthem. Thank you. Terrific job, guys. I'd also like to take a second to say hello to some special friends and supporters of the foundation. Here in the front row, Bill and Susan Barabalt. Bill is president and CEO of the foundation. Jared Kurame, who is the newly appointed chief of Yorba Linda Police Services. Mayor Tom Lindsay from City Council, and Mayor Pro Tem Peggy Huang, Councilmember Gene Hernandez and his wife Luis, and Councilman Craig Young and his wife Sonia. Thank you guys for being here today. Today we honor the lives of the 2,977 Americans who died on that horrific day 15 years ago, and the thousands more who made the ultimate sacrifice fighting against enemies that commit these senseless acts of terror. In 2015 and 2016 alone, more than 40,000 people were killed throughout the world in terror attacks. Attacks like the ones in Brussels, in Paris, in Baghdad, in Cairo, closer to home here in Orlando, and less than an hour away in San Bernardino. Could we have a brief moment of silence for all who have lost their lives to this evil on and since September 11th? Just outside the East Room, you will see artifacts from Ground Zero and the War Against Terror. On the lawn at the corner of Yorba Linda Boulevard and Eureka Avenue, you will see a display of 2,977 U.S. flags placed by the Young Americans for Freedom Foundation. Observe these, reflect on these. They are there to remind us about what happened. They are there to remind us to never forget. The president whose name is on this building was determined to bring the full scope of his office to eliminate terrorism whenever it occurred. Reflecting on the assassination of the Israeli Olympians at the Munich Olympics in 1972, President Nixon said that in one stroke, the use of terrorism eliminates those safeguards of civilization which mankind has painstakingly erected over the centuries. President Nixon said something profound over 40 years ago that is still really very applicable today. The world is reaching out for peace. The way may be hard and treacherous, but men of reason and decency are determined today, as perhaps never before, to make the effort. Let us not be disrupted or turned away by those who would loose anarchy upon the world. Let us seek no accommodations with savagery, but rather act to eliminate it. We will be inspired during this ceremony by the best, decent, and most determined men and women of peace in America today. They are the police officers who put themselves in harm's way and protect us where we walk, work, and go to school. They are the firefighters who act as first responders, sacrificing themselves for the search and rescue of their fellow citizens despite fire, collapsing buildings, and extreme danger. They are the troops who put themselves on the front line to prevent terror from reaching our shores. And they are the families who pay the ultimate price for their loved ones' service to this great country. Let us not thank them for what they do just today, but every day. Giving our invocation today is Orange County Fire Authority Senior Chaplain Dave Keene. Chaplain Keene became an Orange County Fire Authority chaplain in 2001 and became senior pastor chaplain this year. He spent a week in New York City as part of a national chaplain team addressing the emotional toll of the approaching one-year anniversary in August of 2002. Ladies and gentlemen, Chaplain Keene.
You may have a seat. As Chris mentioned, I had the opportunity in August 2002 to be called back to New York City 3 weeks before the first anniversary as part of a chaplain team that was fanned out across all the 5 boroughs. I was assigned to the Queens Borough, which meant for 7 days I did nothing but from 7 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night, visit fire stations talking with the men and the women who lost partners, who lost colleagues, brothers in the fire service. And as I sat around dinner tables and rode out on fire engines, I heard story after story of heartbreaking loss. The funerals were all done. They were trying to get back to life as normal, and yet many were feeling a hardship in moving on. And so I sat there and we talked about the meaning of hope and the legacy that these 343 men left behind. And I left there seeing a resolve that even though many of them were struggling with the difficulty of the job now, that they were going to stay committed to the fire service and to serving the people of New York City. And I went from the firehouses and they took me to the academy where hundreds of new recruits were going through the paces to join the ranks of the FDNY, replacing those who had been lost. And I saw with those young recruits an eagerness to take the job, regardless of the risk. And then one night, just before we left, they took us to ground zero. And they allowed us to go into the pit that had just been recently cleaned up and was being prepared for a celebration of remembrance a few weeks later. We walked around the pit as it had been cleared, and they told us where the different towers lay. And the magnitude of the attack and the loss became very real. I had an opportunity a few years ago to take my family back to that area, back to that memorial now built with pools and names on stone. And I remember looking for a particular name, a chaplain, Father Michael Judd, who basically was one of the very first who passed away in the attack on New York when the towers collapsed. He actually was in one of the towers giving last rites, so where firefighters had already fallen, when he was hit by the debris of the North Tower and was killed instantly. You've seen pictures of him being carried out that have been etched into our memory. And I took my family over to find his name, just to pay honor to a man who tried to do what I try to do every day, to bring hope and encouragement to firefighters who give themselves in a sacrificial way. In their honor, let's pray. Almighty God, we gather today to remember the legacy of lives that have been given not just 15 years ago, but have been given over the past hundreds of years for the rights that we celebrate as a nation. For the men and women who fought courageously on foreign battlefields and even our own country. We remember the loss of those who gave their lives 15 years ago. But we celebrate what we have in its place, a nation of hope, a nation of freedom. And we say thank you for those gifts that you've given. We ask your special protection upon those who are serving both overseas and in our own community, that not only they be kept safe, but they be able to be brought home back to their families. And we ask your blessing upon this time. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Keene, for the prayer. Very moving. That beautiful piece was played by our choir and jazz ensemble was Homeland. Please allow me a chance to thank the two terrific groups. On my right is the Villa Park High School Jazz Ensemble, led by their director, Chuck J. Chuck and his team support the Nixon Foundation's programming throughout the year, and he is very, very near and dear to us here. Thank you for everything you do. Then on my left, and filling the perimeter of the room, is the Orange High School Concert Choir, the Orange Community Master Chorale, and the Orange County Chamber Singers, led by their director, Mike Short. Also, Mike is also very near and dear to us here, and supports us out tremendously. Thank you for all you do. Our first speaker manages a department of 71 fire stations and 1,277 personnel. They cover 23 cities and unincorporated areas of Orange County. Fire Chief Jeff Bowman served as president of the California Fire Chiefs Association and the Orange County Fire Chiefs Association, and was appointed by the State Board of Fire Services by Governor Pete Wilson, who happens to be on our board, in 1997. He has served on committees of the National Fire Protection Association and the International Association of Fire Chiefs. In 2004, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger appointed him to be the Governor's Blue Ribbon Commission to address statewide fire and emergency issues. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief of the Orange County Fire Authority, Jeff Bowman.
Well, thank you. It's a privilege to be here today. I am going to take a little bit of a different approach this afternoon. We are obviously here to honor sacrifices that were made, to honor brave humans who went into places, as you've already heard, that most people typically would not go into. But we do honor them, we do respect them, we'll always remember them. But what I'd like to focus a little bit on today is how we deal with each other as human beings. I think everybody here over the age of 25 remembers where you were that fateful day. If you were under 25, you might have been young enough that you just weren't quite sure. You probably remembered it. But if you were over 25, it's kind of one of those days that we all know where we were. I certainly remember. I was just about to finish my 15th year as the fire chief in Anaheim, and I was on my way to work. And I heard the report come across the radio, and I couldn't believe that it was a mistake. I mean, it was being reported potentially as a lost pilot. Shortly thereafter, we all figured out, the world figured out, that that was not the case. But regardless of that, we've had 15 years of these types of services since then. Many of them are occurring around the county today, and I think that's awesome. We can never forget. But what we really, I think, need to do is look at how we behave as human beings. Pre-9/11, and our law enforcement speaker today will probably echo these sentiments. Firefighters typically worried about their world, how we managed problems that we face. Law enforcement typically dealt with their problems uniquely because they were unique to them. After 9/11, and certainly during the event, it became evident very, very quickly that those days had to end. We had to work together as a team. They were forced to work together as a team. And then post 9/11, I think people in our country started to refocus on what America stands for and what we should all stand for as individuals. With the staggering losses in New York City, we all felt vulnerable. And who do we turn to when we feel vulnerable? We typically go to family, and that's what most people did. 15 years have gone by, as I mentioned, and it seems like at times we forget. We get a little bit lax, we go on with our busy lives. But thank goodness events like this happen on the anniversary, and I hope always happen on this anniversary, so that we never forget the sacrifices that were made. I suggest today that perhaps we need to refocus on a few things. And the first thing I know I will do as an individual and as the fire chief in Orange County is to try to focus on a greater family value. And I don't mean necessarily my home family, which I do anyway, but the greater public safety family. Typically, we might go out and deal with individual problems, or on any given day, law enforcement and firefighters end up working together. I will touch very quickly on this subject. We've had some current events in Orange County where our two agencies, the sheriff's and the fire authority, have had some difficulties in the field. And so the sheriff and I sat down and had lunch, and we were really dumbfounded as to why, in this day and age, the people out in the field don't realize that we're all one family, we're one department, we're one county, and we ought to act that way. And so she and I put a memo together to all of our people and said, knock it off. We are one family. And when the sheriff says knock it off, I guarantee you people knock it off. They didn't listen to me, but they listened to her. So the other thing I think we need to do is focus not just on us as individuals, but greater communities. This is a perfect example of what a community can do when it decides to rally together for the right cause. We need to seek greater national values. And I mean a stronger nation, not stronger political parties. That seems to be the color of the day. Meanwhile, our country seems to be in a state of disarray. I would like for all of us to figure out what we can do as individuals to stop that and to try and figure out a way, as the sheriff and I will be doing, to figure out a way to be one team, to stand up for our flag when it's raised. And I don't want to get political here, but I probably already did. I want to read something, too, that I stumbled upon the other day. It was written by the chancellor of the University of Texas system. And he put this out to all of the administrators in that system. And he said, honoring our flag does not imply that the republic for which it stands is perfect. Far from it. Honoring the flag is our collective commitment that we will constantly attempt to get better as a nation, to improve as a people, and to use the freedoms we've been given to make the earth a better place. I think that pretty much says it all. So when we were attacked, we focused on being Americans and the insult to all of us for that attack. Firefighters and law enforcement members were greatly appreciated immediately following and up to and including the years immediately thereafter. Today, people seek to harm our law enforcement members. What a shame. I hope that this country never tolerates that kind of behavior. When we leave today, I would hope that all of you and all of us focus on what's best for our country. We should respect and support each other, knowing that a strong America will depend on our behaviors. We must all be leaders, regardless of our place in life. I'd like to close with a blessing that I have received on my time on the earth. I befriended somebody who, in my opinion, and certainly just my opinion, was the best human being I've ever met, a man by the name of John Wooden. Many of you young people probably wonder who that is, but I would encourage you when you go home to look him up. I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours with him, and every time I left him, I felt useless. I felt pathetic. I felt like a complete underachiever. And so I would take some of his maxims. I continue to do it. I take them back to work with me almost on a weekly basis and issue those to the people that work with me. I'd like to leave you with a couple of them in hopes of giving you a blueprint for how to behave better as a human. The best way to improve the team is to improve yourself. Discipline yourself, and others won't have to. How's that one, Sandy? our lives would be measurably easier if we did not get involved in disciplinary matters. The smallest good deed is better than the best intention, so do something. What is right is better than who is right. And to that end, much can be accomplished by teamwork when no one is worried about who gets the credit for that work. Lastly, I would offer one, and Councilmember Hernandez told me to be brief, so I know I've probably gone on too long, but I'm going to offer one more. And that is to make each day your masterpiece. And so my encouragement to you today is when you leave here, go out and make it a masterpiece. Whatever it is you do, do something for somebody today with no expectation of a thank you or anything in return. Go make it a masterpiece and start it perhaps with your family. Thank you all for today.
Chuck, incredible job. Thank you. And thanks to Chief Bowman. Thank you for those moving words. They were really terrific. And on to our next speaker. Our next speaker was sworn in as the 12th Sheriff Coroner for Orange County in June of 2008. Sheriff Sandra Hutchens began her career in law enforcement with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department in 1976. With more than 37 years of service in law enforcement, Sheriff Hutchens possesses invaluable experience in nearly every aspect of the profession. Sheriff Hutchens leads more than 3,800 sworn and professional men and women who serve in areas as diverse as patrol operations, criminal and special investigations, the county's crime lab and courts, the coroner's office, as well as those who serve in Orange County's 5 jails. Ladies and gentlemen, Orange County Sheriff Sandra Hutchens.
Well, good afternoon, and aren't we all so very lucky to be here today together to remember at such a special place. I would like to thank the Richard Nixon Foundation for hosting this wonderful event, as you do every year, and hosting our Day of Remembrance. The Orange County Sheriff's Department and all of law enforcement and fire agencies enjoy a special relationship with the Richard Nixon Foundation, and we appreciate what they do. Let's give them a big round of applause. The stark images of September 11th, 2001 are forever etched in our collective memories. 2 months after the attack, President George W. Bush said this: "Time is passing, yet for the United States of America, there will be no forgetting September the 11th. We will remember every family that lives in grief. We remember the fire and the ash, the last phone calls, the funerals of children. Today, 15 years later, we remember those who risked their lives, some making the ultimate sacrifice to help others, many times total strangers. We honor all those who assisted that fateful day, but in particular, our first responders, some of who live with the trauma of that day and who still suffer the emotional and physical scars. The individuals who attacked us and those who assisted them are terrorists in the truest sense of the word. They use violence to invoke fear, to cause others to adopt their ideology, to change their way of life. They have no respect for individual freedoms, human rights, or honor. They underestimated America. They underestimated our indomitable spirit, both as individuals and as a nation. So immediately following 9/11, we all went to work. Prior to 9/11, as the Chief Bowman mentioned, law enforcement agencies, fire departments did not work too well together. We were just consumed with our own little area of the world. Today, we work together. We focus on terrorism. We work with the FBI. We work with the Department of Homeland Security. We work with our local partners. We have members of our departments working with the FBI on joint terrorism task forces and counterterrorism teams. We have a fusion center right here in Orange County, the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center, made up of federal, state, and local partners who gather, analyze, and disseminate intelligence and potential threats to all of Orange County and the surrounding counties. We have over 4,000 terrorism liaison officers consisting of representatives from fire, law, and health, as well as private and public sector partners. These are individuals who have had additional training in recognizing terrorism-related activities or indicators. We monitor events occurring both here in America and across the globe to see if there's a nexus or threat to our community. Whether it is an event such as the attacks in San Bernardino or Brussels or Nice or Florida, we are watching and we are prepared. Our law enforcement personnel participate in active shooter training and drills to prepare for response to multiple simultaneous attacks. We have additional protections at our airports and on our transportation systems. So what type of threat are we facing today? 9/11 was obviously a large-scale attack. Today, we are seeing lone wolf type attacks, such as the one perpetrated in San Bernardino. These types of attacks are generally inspired by groups such as ISIS, but carried out by individuals without much contact or coordinated planning. This makes it much harder for law enforcement to detect and intercept these types of attacks. But this is our new reality in America. Make no mistake about it, we have been able to thwart many planned attacks before they were realized. We monitor open source internet sites and counter the recruitment efforts by terrorist groups on a daily basis. I had the honor to travel to Israel twice to study their counterterrorism efforts. It is a much different mindset than the one we have in America, but for a very good reason. And those of you who may have visited know this. When you realize how small Israel is and how close their threats are, it is really quite amazing. In Israel, it is understood from a very young age that it is every citizen's duty to ensure the safety of that country. That's why everyone is required to serve in the military. When any citizen sees suspicious activity, they report it, or in some cases, immediately act upon it. When Israelis go into a restaurant, they are upset if they are not searched, if their bags are not searched. They want to ensure that they can have a safe meal in a safe place. When a bomb goes off, they immediately secure the area and get the scene back to normal as quickly as humanly possible to wipe away all traces of the terrorist act. While I hope we never get to that point in America, we do need everyone to pay attention to suspicious behavior. I'm sure you've all heard about the program See Something, Say Something. So simple, but yet so important. Help be our eyes and ears, and don't hesitate to report something suspicious. Recommit on this 15th anniversary to take an active role in your families and your neighbors' safety. I'm a big fan of Winston Churchill. My staff knows that. I've got his picture up on my wall, and I read a lot of his books. Not a perfect man, but a perfect leader. I think we have all heard his speech made at one of the most critical times for England in World War II. He said this: "We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight. We shall never surrender." Resiliency, optimism, and resolve. That's who we are as Americans. We shall never forget, and we shall never surrender to terrorism. Thank you very much.
Spectacular job. That was a beautiful rendition. Thank you, Mike. And thanks to the sheriff, too, for your remarks as well. Those were terrific. Our final speaker is the commanding general of the oldest and largest active duty division in the United States Marine Corps, the 1st Marine Division. Major General Daniel O'Donohue graduated from the College of William and Mary with a Bachelor of Arts in History and was commissioned in 1984. He is an infantry officer and has commanded at every level, from platoon through division. He has completed combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan as both a commander and staff officer. Major General O'Donohue is a distinguished graduate of the Naval Postgraduate School, Amphibious Warfare School, School of Advanced Warfighting, and National War College. This is one tough Marine. Ladies and gentlemen, Major General Daniel O'Donohue.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks to the President Nixon Foundation for bringing us together for this profoundly important Patriot Day commemoration. Thank you, Sheriff Hutchens and Fire Chief Bowman. It is an honor to share the stage with you and your senior leadership of the brave first responders. And thank you all. Thank you all for attendance, for the sacrifice of your time. You could be somewhere else today. You have selflessly come forward to share your strength and your prayers. It makes a difference. Police on the beat, firemen at the ready, and our military forward deployed in harm's way take strength from you today. For those who have lost loved ones in 9/11 and subsequent combat, may you find solace in our support and commemoration. God bless our 9/11 and Gold Star families. For those of you who have living memories of 9/11, thank you for never forgetting. For those growing number of young with no memory of 9/11, you are the next greatest generation. You are the ones who will build on the great deeds of 9/11 as you take part in our ongoing experiment of democracy. Thank you all for this moment together. 15 years ago, nearly 3,000 innocent Americans were indiscriminately and viciously murdered over a horrific 102 minutes. Fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, husbands and wives, and our courageous first responders, all dear loved ones, were mercilessly targeted by one of the great evils of our time. Today, we are joined together here and in similar ceremonies all across the United States to commemorate the tragic loss of these innocents and our defining response, the instant, unhesitating, and enduring acts of heroism, defiance, and above all, love. Our despicable enemies intended in the deadliest attack on our homeland in history to intimidate, coerce, and instill paralyzing fear. Their brutal attack exceeded all their expectations in the dramatic loss of life and physical destruction. They calculated that we would be terrorized by the mesmerizing press of plummeting bodies, flames, collapsing towers, agonizing families, and heart-rending memorials to our beloved dead. They fanatically believed that their warped ideology, held by a disturbed band, would overcome our national character and mettle. Our enemies were wrong, of course, instantly and clearly wrong, even in the first moments of the attack. For even before the two towers had fallen, thousands had taken personal acts of courage and rescue at the risk of their own lives. Quickly behind them, the nation was reunited in resolve. 9/11 was a victory, our victory, and a victory of the most important kind. It was a defining moral victory, one in which we proved our indomitable humanity and resolute courage. In response to an action born of unspeakable hate, we proved that our common virtue was selfless self-sacrificing love, that finest love for our fellow man that the Greeks call agape. In the first shock of the attack, our extraordinarily brave firemen and police responded by rushing forward through the flames and chaos at their peril to courageously save those trapped in the towers. On United Flight 93, quick-acting citizens rapidly organized and counterattack. This was the first attack of the war by unarmed citizens with a battle cry, "Let's roll," that any Marine would respond to. Volunteers walked into New York City to give all they could in the aftermath. Loving calls home from those who were to die transcended all the evil intended. During these life and death moments, with no time to prepare or think, men and women, both in uniform and in ordinary civilians, joined in instant, heroic action to save, protect, and heal, all under extreme conditions that would have overwhelmed lesser heroes. Many of these first responders, in an act of no greater love, chose to sacrifice their lives for their fellow Americans. One of the silver linings, if there can be any silver lining to war, is the closeness between generations, our young men and women who've come forward to serve, the closeness between our first responders, police, firemen, civilians, and the military. I'll talk about the military. In one respect, the vile terrorists were right in their 9/11 predictions. They believed that we and the world would be forever changed, and we were. But just as we responded to the challenges of 7 December 1941, another day of infamy, so we've responded to 9/11. The attack on Pearl Harbor gave a rise to the greatest generation, one of self-sacrifice, achievement, momentous victories, and a better peace, not just for Americans, but for the world. 9/11 has given birth to another greatest generation, one dedicated in the face of great evil to ensuring peace. Over 5 million of these pure-hearted patriots joined in military service since 9/11, following in the legacy of valor and strengthened by our veterans from past wars, World War II, Korea, the Gulf War, and Vietnam. My only qualification to speak to you today is as a witness to this heroic generation and these fine young men and women, forged by 9/11 and tested in battle. Today, our ranks are filled with great, idealistic Americans ready to assume responsibility for our freedom. They live Spartan lives, train exceedingly hard, and are forward deployed to the toughest spots in the world to defend us. This is a largely youthful heroism that we honor. The average age in our ranks and those in service is 25, with those in combat units often younger. Many of those joining since 9/11 were about 3 at the time of that attack. Since 9/11, more than 5,000 of them have made the ultimate sacrifice, that last full measure of devotion. Over 52,000 were wounded in action. We commemorate them today. The faces of our killed in action differ little from those graduating from high school or college this past spring. It's hard to believe that teenagers who had such trouble with chores or were so recently engaged in playing sports could so selflessly and nobly engage the enemy in mortal combat. They could take a life or save one with superb judgment, courage, and training. They could hold their expert fire at their own peril as a vile enemy use innocence as shields. They learned quickly, well beyond their years, what it truly means to live a heroic life. Corporal Jonathan Yale and Lance Corporal Jordan Harder had to make a decision in 6 seconds, a life or death decision stationed in Iraq. A vehicle was coming down the serpentine barriers. It was a truck loaded with thousands of pounds of explosives. The intent was to blow up the barracks where their sleeping brothers lay and to kill or wound hundreds of Marines and their Iraqi brothers. In that instance, they had to make a decision to hold strong, and they did. In the words of the Iraqi soldier who fled, they should have run away like any normal man would have to save his life. What that Iraqi didn't know until then, he said, and what he learned at that very instance, was that Marines aren't normal. Choking past his emotion, the Iraqi said, "Sir, in the name of God, No sane man would have stood there and done what they did. They saved us all. They stood tall, they leaned into their fires, and we have a video of it, 6 seconds to make a decision to hold, 6 seconds whether they would live or die, sacrifice their lives for others. And they made that decision to give up their lives for their fellow Marines. Corporal Paul Gardner, a fire team leader in close combat, was near mortally wounded as he attacked a defended bunker. After the first would be over 20 surgeries, and he was unable to speak. He had to do this in a whiteboard. He was asked how he was doing. His response was, "I have failed." This is a man who's given his legs. He'll never walk again. The question, why? Because I have left my Marines behind in combat. Corporal Hogan, just 20 while serving in Afghanistan, volunteered to put himself at risk as the point man to carry the metal detector when the squad was tasked to find explosive devices. He detected one, immediately alerted his squad, and used his body to shield his brothers, awarded the Navy Cross posthumously. His sister said of him, "My friends and me knew that if he was given the decision of saving someone, he would do it 120%. That's just who Donald was." These Marines lived with a self-sacrificing, unconditional love. The irony is that its clearest expression is in events like 9/11 or in the darkest spots of the world, in brutal combat where magnificent men and women transcend extreme exhaustion, fear, deprivation, and injury. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Today we pay tribute, commemorate, and take strength from our 9/11 fallen, the wounded and their families. We give our lives meaning by devotion to a cause. The ideals, sacrifice, honor, and love of the 9/11 generation inspire us. We have an example, one passed down by veterans of this and all our wars, that is worthy of commemoration. It is at the heart of who we are. 9/11 unleashed the American spirit and joined us united in defense of our freedom, democracy, and humanity. 9/11 will never be an easy day. Our losses will always be painful as they are. For all our wars, we will never forget. Our fallen are always with us. We stand on the shoulders of these giants. Their spirits and passions live on in us. In this living connection, we pledge to serve for those who sacrifice beyond all measure for our freedom. Today, we recommit in their honor to our better selves. Thank you for your witness today. Thank you for your sacrifice of time and commitment. Thank you for your tribute and support to our police, firemen, first responders, and the young warriors who relentlessly pursue those who would do us harm. You made a difference today in this remembrance. God bless our fallen. God bless America. Semper Fidelis.
General, thank you for those incredibly powerful and moving words. I know they resonate deeply in myself and with the rest of our audience out here as patriots. We are going to conclude today's ceremony with the very dramatic Battle Hymn of the Republic. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your service and participation. Chuck, Mike, take it away. Ladies and gentlemen, you guys just blew the roof off this place. Thank you so much. That concludes our ceremony. Thank you for coming out. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.